Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. Welcome back. This is part 2 with Michael Forhan. We had such great content, we couldn't keep it all in one episode. So if you missed the first part, episode 48, go check it out. How does Mike Forhan, with all your knowledge, because it's naturally hardwired in all of us, we love to judge. I can't believe they're not doing this. Or like, how did it get this way? And that is a real, like, as human beings, we struggle. Just sometimes I'll see one on the street and I'll see someone that I don't even know. And I start thinking, well, why is this person like this? And it's like, why are you even judging them? Like, why did they even come into your brain? So how do you keep you and your team and just out of that judgment mode and staying in caring, helping mode?
Sometimes, Trevor, that's really hard.
Well, if you told me you never did it, I tell you you're lying.
It's really hard because, like I said before, you've got this preconceived notion of what you're walking in because you're loaded up with this information from the person who's putting you in, right? In a distress situation. You know, they're saying, these guys, they're this, they're that, they're the other thing. So trying to take that information and push it aside for the time being, and then to go see what's really going on and then say, hey, does it equate, right? Does it, it's really hard to separate that walking in and being judgmental and, pointing out all the stuff that is so easy to point out. It's like these guys that are perpetual list makers. They walk in and say, here's all the issues, and they create a massive list, and that list could preside over that organization for a very long time until they put tactical execution to every single step. And one of the things that, for many, many years that myself and my colleagues have all said is, not only are we willing to talk about the situation and we're willing to roll our sleeves up and actually do what we recommend. And that's part of the separation of those advisors that can walk in and really establish credibility is, as an organization, we're not going to just tell you what to do unless we're willing to do it ourselves, right? And that's where back to that experience comes from. Our experience says, hey, look, we've had success in doing this in the past. Does it guarantee success in the future? No, but we've had enough repetitive success that we know we could make an improvement in doing certain things, right? So our tactical execution and then our react and adjust to any failure modes that come along, implementing countermeasures to those failure modes are really, really important. So those are some of the things that we're always doing, right? We always think of ourselves as always learning, always open to learn. We don't have all the answers. We've got enough of them, right? At least to get us started. But as we go through those experiences, reacting, adjusting, and finding really true countermeasures to stuff that is underperforming is really what we do. And holding people accountable, holding ourselves accountable is all part of the right outcome. So, when we go in and we've got this preconceived notion of what we see, man, I got to tell you, we've seen a lot. And I can't believe some of the situations I've walked into because I do the same thing, Trevor. I'm like, how the heck did they get here? What went so wrong that here's where we're at? Why did the emotion of a situation get so elevated that people just decided to turn it off and do nothing? Right? Because that happens. And I see it all the time, right? It's like the obstinance of just people wanting to stand back and say, you know what? This is your problem. You figure it out. Right? It's like, so that divisiveness that gets created around situations is incredible. So bringing that back together is also part of the technique that we have to be pretty savvy at in order to bring the parties back together, because it's way better as an outcome if we can figure out how everybody can work together than just strictly doing a business transfer. Business transfers are expensive. We've done them, right? We've seen situations that have completely broken apart. we're there to protect the client. We're going to protect the client, right? We'd like not to end up there. Sometimes we do, right? Sometimes there are those situations where you just can't get out of it. And you're not going to repair that relationship. You're not. And so recognizing that, though, is very important, right? De-stressing an event is very important. If that means we need to move part of the production or all of the production into another space, location, supplier, we're going to make sure that we protect ultimately the customer at the end of the day and do what we can to support the employees of that organization at the end of the day, right? We're always going to work to do that, because at the end of the day, that's what's really important, is making sure that you're preserving as much as you can without destroying it, right? And so when we are challenged with those situations, we walk in, it's tough not to judge. It's tough not to be a pointer outer, but there's no way you can be successful in just doing that, right? I mean, that's
No.
I look at so before my career at Crossover, as an independent consultant. Before that, I was a VP at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I learned a lot at PwC. I had some great mentors along the way, and my time at Magna, as you know from your time at Magna, the titles that we carried and the roles that we didn't necessarily always, they weren't always aligned, right? We just did what we needed to do to be successful in the situation that we were in. And that was always first and foremost to us. And I think, growing up in that environment has always stayed with me. And so when I think about some of the applications that we had at former employers, I look at that and say, did we always do what's best for our clients? Did we always do the best we could in a situation? And were we given all the tools to be successful in those situations? And when we weren't, what did we do? Right. And so oftentimes we're not given the tools to be successful. We have to find a way. Right. And part of growing up inside where we grew up is we found a way. We had that ability to sit there and say, so what's really important, and what must we do today? What must we do to make a difference right now? And so that ends up being a pretty good focus to bring into these situations where we walk in to say, what can we do differently? So if I walk in with a preconceived notion of judging, that's not focused on what we can do differently right now to make a significant change, a performance improvement that's going to drive a better result. So being able to talk that way with leadership and with management at these critical risk situations is really, truly important. And so a lot of it is you can't walk in and be fearful of what you're going to see, because you're going to see it. You're going to see all kinds of different things.
I always like to think, Trevor, what you're about to say, is it helpful? Is it helpful to the ears that you're speaking to? Or are you just transferring what's in your mind out of your mouth? Because that's, we have this filter in our brains where we can control what comes out of our mouth. We can't always control the hamster inside the cage, but you can make decisions when you want to let him come out for a run. And that's something that I've tried to practice on is, and sure, I'm curious on how the heck did we get here? But now that I know that if I say that, I'm going to pull that person out of the current present mode, which is the best place to be in, put them in the past, maybe get them some more anxiety of, oh my gosh, how did we get here? And this does suck. And it's like, okay, well, that's, now we're off the whole topic of just being in the present moment. What can we do?
You've got some great concepts there, and you're right. I'll digress for a little bit of a story time, if I might. Absolutely. So I was in Europe. I got a phone call that said, hey, I've got a critical supply risk. You're near enough by. I was in Belgium, and the supply risk was in the east part of France. And so, like I mentioned before, sometimes you get the phone call, and as you're driving to the airport, you're calling the supplier saying, hey, I'm on my way there. Just want to know who I should be in touch with. Is the plant going to be open, and so on and so forth. I want to get an understanding of what's really going on. Here's what I'm hearing. And so this situation, happened a few years ago, and I walked in, and I was, you want to grab your hair, you want to start pulling it out and going, how did we get here? And And it was amazing to unravel 3 to 4 years worth of experience that these guys had in like the first 20 minutes of, oh my gosh, it seemed like a massive pile on of, counterproductive activities on both sides, right? And so the initial response of the supplier that I called was, you can't come here. We're not going to be open for this. And I said, with all due respect, I'm actually boarding a plane right now. So I'm going to be there. If you choose not to let me in, that's your choice. I'm hopeful that you won't do that as just a human to human, right? Because that doesn't seem like the right response.
Relationship.
But I get it. I mean, if you're extremely frustrated and you don't want to deal with the OEM client that you have in that way, and just, but I'll be honest with you, I'm just here to help. I'm here to understand what it is that you're going through, to see if there's something that I can see that might be helpful for you. And so they ended up opening the door to me, introduced me to a couple of their guys who ran the facility. And I started going through their facility with them. I started going through all the activities with them. And, within the next couple of days, we had a game plan set that got them back to where they needed to be in like the next 3 weeks. And it was amazing to be able to walk into that situation. Unfortunately, as an organization, they could not sustain what was going on and were really undermining a lot of the performance that the people on the shop floor, the good people on the shop floor running the operations, really knew to engage in. They had a lot of intelligence, a lot of experience in the field, but the leadership couldn't see what really was required to happen there. This company unfortunately went through a bankruptcy, was purchased out of bankruptcy, put some less talented people in charge, and ended up eroding the situation that we had quickly recovered. And it took a much bigger effort to get them back to where they needed to be. And so, sometimes the obstinance of what you walk into doesn't necessarily reflect the good people that you need to work with to get things moving forward in the right way. And so you end up being faced with all kinds of challenges in the space that I work in, Trevor. And frankly, it's if you're open to really going through the experience of what it is that you're going to see, and over the last 2 decades of doing consulting and walking into these different facilities, you can't walk in judgmental of what it is that got you here, because that's in the past, right? It's really finding and defining a way forward that is meaningful for everybody involved. And when you set the bar to say, we need to take care of our customer, we need to take care of our employees, we need to do the right thing here, you can usually find some common ground about how you work forward.
So I'll leave with this question for you, Mike, for our listeners. And that you've been in the situation where someone from the outside is coming to help you. This could be a corporate safety guy for an audit. It could be, somebody coming in from your customer. It could be whoever. Could be someone like me, a coach coming in and helping. But it happens all the time.
Sure.
And sometimes they don't get people that are in the mindfulness state and are more focused on their own maybe thoughts. And when you do get help that doesn't feel like help, and then all of a sudden you've got someone else in your building and you're not sure what's going on, what their intent is, but all you know right now is that you feel like you don't want them here and you just want to fix the problem yourself. What's a way for someone that's in a plant today to approach someone from the outside? Like, what's the questions to ask if you feel like this outside person is not really helping you? They're here for a short term, but it just doesn't feel like help. How do you approach them?
There's a lot to what you just asked. I'm going to try and segment it a little bit if I can. So the historical value around, hey, I'm just here to help. If it feels heavy and it feels like it's not helping, will certainly bias the opinion of the person who's receiving the help. Right? It'll just diminish the integrity of quote unquote the consultant industry. And I get it, right? I've seen it live. I've seen organizations that commit that they're there to help, but really don't have, kind of the experience and bandwidth to lend the type of help that is really truly required. It's something that I know that at Crossover we work on a lot, and that's the speed and precision of how we help, right? We help in a way that works quickly to understand the situation and works precisely on the big rocks, right? On the things that are going to gain momentum, right? We do that a lot, but that whole integrity around the consulting industry on I'm here to help and it doesn't feel like help, which is where you started. That's tough. It's tough to break the skin of that, bias towards the consulting industry. I can tell you that right out of the gate.
I guess what I'm asking is, I'm Trevor. I'm in my plant. I'm running my plant. It's just how I feel. My feelings may not be accurate. I've just listened to this podcast.
Sure.
What do I say to that person from the outside? What specifically is a question I should be asking to validate my feeling, whether there's help or not? Because I could be wrong. Maybe it is helpful and it's just, I'm just stuck. What do I need to ask this person that's here to help me so that I can maybe get unstuck in my mindset? What questions should I be asking? Because it's like, dude, it just feels like it's another person in the building. I got to explain to what's going on. What can I ask that person? Maybe help myself get past that.
Yeah. What would you do in this time, and what would you do here? Right. It's not necessary to make it complicated, right? It's not necessary to say, how are you going to help me? It's, why do you think you can help me? What ends up, if I ask you for help, what makes you think you can do it? And then talk to me about your approach. Here's the situation. What would you do? What would you do? What does your background tell you? What does your thought process tell you? What should I do? Right. And I can tell you though, before you even get there, the maturity and awareness of the person that's asking the question or asking for help is already at a high level, right? The moment that they're sitting there saying, I'm going to ask for help, they've already recognized that, hey, I probably need help, or I need a different opinion. I need a different perspective, yes. Right? And I would encourage a lot of people to think that. We were young once, right? Not so much anymore. I got the gray hair to show it, and like I mentioned before, the battle scars too. We often thought that there's no way that anybody can walk into the situation and help me because, let's face it, our self-awareness wasn't as aware as we thought it was. And, we had a lot of ego involved in that. And I'm not suggesting that, young people are full of ego. I don't want to do that. Right. But oftentimes as you get along in your career, you start to look at the different perspectives that can come in and really cast a different opportunity for you to engage and maybe end up with different outcomes. And I think we're seeing that all over our industry right now, because there's lots of different types of individuals that are coming into manufacturing that weren't necessarily into manufacturing. But notwithstanding, that maturity of perspective is huge, right? The fact that somebody recognizes that they could use help or could use an opinion, I think it's huge, because that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. It was more my way or the highway type of approach. And you either got on board and you didn't engage people for their intelligence. You engage them to do what you wanted them to do. And I think we've broken down a lot of those barriers over the last decade and a half that says, we really bring in people because they're smart people, and we need to engage those smart people to help us out, right? Yeah. And if we're telling them, those smart people, what to do, we're probably not getting the best of what those people have to offer. And so when we look at bringing in people that have kind of the experience that I know my team brings to the table, when we engage those people, all that experience and all that knowledge of seeing all these different opportunities to make improvements, and then go in to say, hey, understand the situation, make sure that we can characterize that situation, and then work our way through that, that becomes really important. So if somebody's trying to figure out how to ask for help, the simplest way is ask for help, right?
How can
Here's
you
my
help me?
situation. What would you do?
Yeah.
Right. And oftentimes, Trevor, my lead on these situations is, let me come meet you. Let me come
Yeah.
see what you're challenged with. Let me provide you an assessment of what I think. Let me listen to your story. Let me observe what you have going on. Let me talk to a bunch of people that are already contributing to the situation. Take that away, kind of distill it down, think about it, and come back to you with something that might be meaningful. And I'll be the first to tell you that my team will be the first to tell you that we don't think we can help you. We're not going to waste your time. We're not going to waste your energy. It's very rare though, we walk into a situation where we don't think we can help the organization out. That first step on somebody realizing and recognizing that they may potentially need help, it's a huge, huge step. And the courage to get there is awesome.
Well, yeah. And you can't have courage without vulnerability. And I think if the listeners just take away, and if I could have listened to this years ago, I probably could have saved myself some personal anguish just by asking that question. So you're here. I mean, I'm thinking whether it's an auditor or whoever it is, it's like, how do you help me? And I think just by the chemicals in your brain, by having the ability to be humble enough to ask that question, like just sincerely, like I'm coming from a good place. I'm just telling you how I feel. I feel a little frustrated right now. I'm not clear on how you are helping me. Can we unpack this?
Yeah.
And I think that's just going to change everything just by asking that question. So it's a great spot to leave our listeners with. What I'm hearing through you, Mike, today is a lot about relationships, staying out of that judgment mode, adding value, staying in that present moment, all those different things. And from that unique perspective that you get to see, it is fantastic. And I'll leave the website for crossover. Mike is the president. You can reach out to him directly. We'll leave his contact information in there. And I'll do my final plug here in the fact of this fall, we'll continue to run Leading with Emotional Intelligence programs where we do an assessment. We measure 42 observable behaviors, and we have 6 online classes spread apart over 6 months. And then we measure again, because in manufacturing, we like to understand results. So if you're interested in that, I'll leave information in the show notes for that. And Mike went through the program. So Mike, what did you learn about yourself going through that program? And maybe what's one behavior that you learned about yourself and you find benefit?
Before I go there, Trevor, I think there's something that you said that's extremely important, and I'd like to reiterate because this is a huge, huge opportunity. Is when we come in and always measure our value statement, our value contribution, and do so at a frequency that's meaningful, extraordinary things happen. That connection with your client, that connection with their thought, are you helping? Is to me begging the issue of you're not measuring yourself at the right frequency, and you're not making sure that the value statement is truly understood. So whether that's at the end of a week and a client comes back and says, hey, I'm curious as to what you guys did this week. Did I get a return on my investment? Right. And we're constantly talking about that. I know you do so in Operation Kickstart. Is there value with what we're bringing to the table? And asking that question is really, truly important. And getting the answers that you need is also important, right? Because we should constantly be measuring ourselves with the value that we bring to the table. So having said that, the program that myself and some of my key team leaders went through with you, Trevor, was awesome. Right from the initial assessment, establishing individual workbooks, and then working through each element of the emotionally intelligent leadership model and the core competencies of that model were extremely important. Whether it be the awareness functions of internal awareness, external awareness, and then awareness of others, right? They all have key elements to them governs how a lot of us behave. Making sure that we truly understand the implications of each of those elements is truly important. And then dealing with how real are we, right? I love the fact that you say, and you often say, is how did you show up? Right? So your authentic self and how you showed up today is extremely important. And then your thoughtfulness around how you show up is also extremely important, because there's lots of life events that happen. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes we carry those into the environments we're walking into. And, no different than going in and prejudging in a situation. And not wanting to do that is very similar to, did I show up in the right way today? Am I engaging in the right way today? Am I carrying baggage that I don't need to be carrying in because the person across the table from me doesn't need my baggage, right? I mean, that's a huge, awesome part of, I think, what you've put a lot of characterization around that we went through. And I found the whole program very good. And then, as you get into the overall emotional reasoning about it and how people have different perspectives on how you show up and how you behave, and your empathetic self and all of that characterization that you've delivered through your program, Trevor, I thought was great. And, so your listeners know, I have absolutely zero issue on recommending your Operations Kickstart and the Emotional Intelligence program that you have. I think you've helped me personally. I know you've helped some of my leadership team members personally. And I'm just, I'm certainly an advocate. There's no doubt about that.
Right on. Grateful for your words, Mike, and grateful for our relationship. So thank you very much for coming on today, and appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you, Trevor. I appreciate what you do too.
Hey folks, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.